to all listeners. Welcome and welcome back to our Loowatt podcast series. Today we're here in celebrating World Toilet Day 2025, and I'm very excited about our guest today. We're going to talk loads about sanitation, social impact, and the missions we all carry in this work. My name is Cheval, and I'm very excited to introduce Maya from Soil. And she's going to talk a little bit more about herself, her work, why she's here. Very happy to have you here, Maya, and welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here and talk about toilets. It's one of my favorite conversations. Yeah, so my name is Maya Lubeck-Schricker. I am the Director of Research and Innovation at Soil, and we are a container-based sanitation organization operating in northern Haiti. And my job as the director of the research team is really twofold. One aim of ours is to kind of work alongside our operations team and help streamline their work and troubleshoot any sort of issues that come up throughout the way. And then our second objective is conducting more like academic-y research to contribute to kind of sectoral knowledge building and promoting container-based sanitation as a whole.
So, I prepared some fun questions for you, just some rapid fire that we can start off this conversation with. I would love to know, I'm very curious. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Honestly, neither. I'm one of the unfortunate middle people, but if I had to choose, probably morning.
And is it coffee or tea?
Tea.
Tea. Ooh, I'm the same.
Yeah.
I'm the
I
same.
can't do the caffeine from coffee. It's too much for me.
And then what's your favorite place you've had an aha moment? And was it on a toilet?
No, it was not on a toilet. I usually let my brain shut down when I'm using the bathroom. My favorite place probably, I spent a couple weeks camping in like a desert in northern India. That was a very thought-provoking time for me. Yeah, that was great.
And then if you had, let's say, like a magic wand, the choice is yours. Would you never wait in line for a toilet ever again, or always find it perfectly clean?
And it perfectly clean. I'd rather wait for a clean toilet than get into a dirty one.
Last question for now. Would you use a futuristic, like super high-tech toilet, or more like a simple but natural-based toilet?
Definitely simple and natural. I don't need it to be super fancy. I just need it to get the job done.
Okay, now let's dig a little bit deeper into toilets and like the importance of it. I would love to know from your personal story as well, is what first brought you into the world of sanitation? I know you mentioned soil a little bit, who we are still with today. What made you think like, yes, I want to work for sanitation?
Yeah, so as I kind of mentioned, I was initially interested in the water side of the wash sector. I had taken some classes when I was in college and was able to do some really cool research with different people about kind of access to water. And then I was looking for a job. This was during COVID, and Soil had a posting, and in my head I was like, well, it's not water, but it's close enough. It's in the same kind of umbrella. So let's give it a try and see what happens. And then I got the job with Soil and just absolutely got sucked into the world of sanitation. I think it's fascinating and there's so much room for work to be done.
Do you remember your early days when you just started?
I do. It was hard because I was working remotely. Initially when I was hired on, I was supposed to move down to Cap-Haïtien, but because it was COVID and everything, that all kind of got mixed up. And so it was hard because I was trying to kind of understand what our operations look like without having ever actually been there in person. And so it was this kind of every day there were new like aha moments, new like, oh, I get this component now. And now I understand this. Or like colleagues would send me a photo of something in the field and it would slowly kind of build in my mind. And then about a year and a half later was when I was actually first able to go down to Haiti and see everything in person. And that was just such a like eye opener. It was incredible. Yeah.
How was that experience for you? Like now you're there, the local sites, face to face with everybody. How was that?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing for me was meeting everyone on our team because I had only done these like voice calls only when absolutely necessary. I didn't speak Creole very well at the time. And then just meeting our team and seeing how like wonderful, kind, friendly, and dedicated everyone is on our team was incredible. And then of course seeing our operations, and I didn't have too much like client interactions initially because again I didn't speak Creole at the time. I've since learned. But it was cool also to be able to kind of follow some of our collectors on their like collection routes and see different customer households and just see the roads that they're traveling every day and all of the different types of neighborhoods that we serve because we span quite a few different sections of the city. And
Uh-huh.
so the demographics and the roads and what the households look like vary so much. And that is really cool to be able to start to see some of that.
I love to know, do you have a favorite story? Maybe like something you've experienced during that first trip, or the people you talked to, the things you saw. Is there something that really moved you inside?
I would say so not actually from our first trip. This is more recent. But I want to say this is maybe 2 years ago now, had a group of community leaders approach us and they wanted us to expand our service to their neighborhood, their area, which is quite a ways outside of the city. And they kind of explained the situation that, a lot of people had to practice open defecation in in that neighborhood. And they actually used to produce salt in this area. And then someone came in and tested the salts and there were really high contamination levels, like E. coli contamination. So they actually had to stop that like major economic activity for the area. And so these community leaders approached us and asked if we could start serving the area. And we eventually were able to expand to that area. And it just like we managed to achieve really high coverage and have since like anecdotally heard a lot of stories from people about how the community feels a lot cleaner and just nicer and like how much happier people
Uh-huh.
are in these neighborhoods. And that really reminds me why we're doing this and to be able to achieve such high coverage in a small area and especially to have people approach us from the demand
Mm-hmm.
side and want us to expand is really a wonderful experience for us.
I think that's really the beauty of this work. You see your impact and like how it affects and changes lives, makes people happier and more dignified, definitely. And for anybody who's listening who maybe hasn't heard of Soul before, how would you describe your organization's mission?
It's funny because I come at water and sanitation. I came at this sector from a public health background, and my time at Soil has started to kind of shift that. And so I think, the way I initially approach our mission is to, help protect people's health and well-being as well as the environment via this route of sanitation that we hope to make accessible to everyone. And then it's kind of evolved and it's not just about it's not just about like physical health, it's also about mental health and dignity and the social experience of sanitation I think is really important as well.
Would you say this is something you wish more people knew about your work, or are there other like lessons, insights you've learned along the way?
Oh, there's so many things I wish people knew about sanitation.
I feel
Definitely
that.
that's one of them. It's not all about physical health. There's so many other components of it. And it feels so straightforward, especially when you're talking to people who do have regular access to sanitation. It's so
Mm.
easy for them
Mhm.
just not to process like what a luxury that can be and to realize like when was the last time you really needed to go to the bathroom but couldn't find one. And that is an experience for a lot of people every single day. And that's just like unfortunate and heartbreaking. But I don't know, other lessons, I think I really enjoy comparing the water sector and the sanitation
Mhm.
sector.
Yeah.
um, and I think what's fascinating for me is this concept that I think globally, a lot of people and governments view water as a public good and sanitation as kind of this private household responsibility. And that has always perplexed me because what I think one household does for water, like for their own water arrangement, doesn't necessarily impact their neighbors, maybe. But what one household does for sanitation has a huge impact on the entire community. And so why are we viewing one thing as private and another as public when really they both matter a lot at the community level. Yeah.
Yeah, that's such an interesting perspective. Do you see you've saw a lot of innovation, positive improvement throughout the years when it comes to that?
Um yeah, I think with the like citywide inclusive sanitation approach and this concept of really trying to achieve coverage across whole populations of people who are in different kind of economic situations, different social situations. So I think there's a move towards approaching sanitation at a community level. The financing side of it, though, I think still needs some work on that.
Where would you hope to see the progress?
I mean, speaking of financing, I hope subsidies become more common. I think it's more recently in the last handful of years becoming a conversation with sanitation that subsidies are necessary in a lot
Mhm.
of contexts. I mean, like sewage in a lot of high income countries is subsidized, so why wouldn't we subsidize it in other places as well? So I hope that that kind of will become a little bit more mainstream, as well as in the case of Haiti in particular, like more government involvement. We're working a lot on contracts and financing contracts that work through the Haitian Water Authority, Water and Sanitation Authority, and I think that's really important as well to kind of move away from um, like individual, like one-off organizations and having it all work via governing bodies. I think would be really cool.
Do you think that's the main driver or the main issue that we get stuck sometimes? Do you see other roadblockers in sanitation?
The one big one that does come to mind is this notion of a flush toilet being the aspirational toilet. I think
Mhm.
in my experience in a lot of different countries and communities, that is what
Mhm.
people want. And if they can't get that, whether it's via like if you can't access it because it's too expensive or because it just doesn't make sense for the local environment, people still want that. And I think that's another challenge that a lot of organizations are that don't provide a flush toilet are combating. And I know a lot of CBS organizations think about that as well. Just this notion that it may be pretty, but we can have other types of sanitation that are also pretty, but actually make sense in a given location. Cap-Haïtien, where we work, is situated on a flood zone, and not to mention the economic costs of installing sewage. It just doesn't make
Mhm.
sense in a lot of cases. And luckily, we don't have much of an issue on the demand side right now. We're still working to provide service to everyone who wants it. Sanitation sector as a whole would be really cool if we could move towards like ecological toilets being the gold standard and what everyone wants rather than a flush toilet. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I think you've said it well. It's the expectation, but it comes also with educating people that there are other options out there, and it doesn't mean that it's less clean. It can be clean, it can be odorless, by any means, of course.
Yeah.
How would you tackle this issue, like this shift of mindset? How do you think we can approach this?
Ooh, that's that's tough. I mean, at a very base level, it's making
Mhm.
these other toilets, in quotation marks, pretty and uh yeah, make them pretty odorless, like you said, and those are things that we've accomplished. And so then it's kind of spreading the word that that's what we're offering,
Mhm.
as well as this notion of kind of a streamlined service. So if you have on-site sanitation, knowing that there's someone that's going to pick it up every week and you can rely on that. I think that's really important because if some random person came to me and said, "Hey, here's this toilet. I'm
Mhm.
going to collect your waste every week," but if you
Mhm.
don't actually build that trust and build that relationship with customers that you're going to provide service, it's going to be clean, going to be more or less effortless for you. Um, I think that'll get it done. And not to mention kind of shifting demand in a lot of higher income countries as well, I think would be really cool. I
Mhm.
know of a few places kind of throughout the US that have like composting toilets, but they almost feel like this extra luxurious thing because they cost, tens of thousands of dollars to build. But I think that's kind of an interesting way to get at this aspirational concept of sanitation is like if you start having people on the other end of the spectrum, like really wanting these fancy composting toilets, then maybe that can kind of have some impact downstream. I don't know.
That's really interesting because right now, as you said, like in the US or even in Europe, we see these kinds of toilets more in glamping.
Yeah.
Like it's already a luxurious experience for those people who go camping, but they still want to have a clean toilet.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how that's already normalized, but now in our homes, we still expect that
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
flush toilet with water. So I think that's really interesting to see it from that perspective as well,
Yeah.
where it's like a sustainable choice you can make instead of unfortunately it being an urgency as it is in some places.
Yeah. Yeah. And even small things like I live in Seattle and some of the buildings around Seattle have like rainwater harvesting and all the toilets are flushed with
Mm.
rainwater. And just those small steps I really
Mhm.
appreciate. Like we don't have to use drinking water to flush our toilets. We can
Yeah.
make those small kind of sustainable, environmentally friendly steps with our sanitation systems everywhere. Yeah.
Is that something you've also learned while working in sanitation, that the smallest things can have the biggest impact, not only on people, but also on the environment, of course, that you can start small, as you said, just collect rainwater, for instance.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I don't think sanitation is a small thing by any means. It's
Oh.
definitely a big endeavor to, provide safe sanitation to everyone. That being said, in my work, when I joined Soil, we had already had a lot of the basics established, like our toilet design and our collection methods and those sorts of things. And so a lot of my work is those small adjustments and like, what little things can we do to streamline the processes? What little things can we do to make the lives of our staff and our customers better? And yeah, and I think that it's lovely to see those impacts over time.
How do you approach these little adjustments? Because it is a big field with huge social impact. How do you manage to continue to improving it and find like little things to tweak?
Yeah, we have an internal process, which is like submitting a research request. And so a lot of our supervisors and managers can always kind of submit requests to us. And that's a great way to just kind of stay in touch with them. And, they'll submit a request of like, hey, this thing broke or this thing isn't working as well as
Mhm.
we want it to. Can you guys help us out? And so then we'll come in. And we've also recently started doing as a research team. Earlier this summer, we had two of our research associates shadow like every single operational process and every single team and staff throughout their work. And so then they could see kind of the daily nitty gritty activities. And they picked out a lot of things like this is something that our staff just do and they make it work, but we can actually make that better. And so that shadowing process has also been a lot of fun to open up a lot of new ideas for research that we can do.
If, let's say, funding and monetary resources weren't an issue, what is one idea that you would love to try?
Yeah. For our specific context where we work, supply chain can be a big issue. And when I say that, I mean we order like toilet seats and also plastic containers from like a facility in southern Haiti. But supply chain can be really tough and it's really expensive to move those parts and it's really unreliable. So if I had unlimited money, it'd be really cool to set up like a manufacturing facility right next door to us that can produce
Mhm.
all of the like plastics or other components of our system that we need regularly. That would unblock a lot of barriers for us. So that would be cool. Because we
Is
also don't
that
necessarily want to just like go to some manufacturer in another country. We, as much as possible, we want it to be um, locally sourced, but sometimes that's just not possible with, the different social situations in the country.
is Haiti your biggest region that you serve?
Yeah, we only serve Cap-Haïtien. So it's just the
Mhm.
second largest city of the country. We're just
Oh.
there, really concentrating on expanding our coverage in a lot of neighborhoods across the city.
What was the most challenging thing?
I mean, financing is always a conversation that needs to be had. Luckily, that's not a big component of my job. We have a whole separate team who work tirelessly with our donors and pursuing different grant opportunities. And I support them as much as possible, but that's not a huge component of my job, which I'm very grateful for. I would also just say kind of big picture, like working through different bureaucracies. So there's the funding component, but also just
Mhm.
navigating to get a contract signed with all of the different parties that are involved in a given initiative or grant, or if you need to make an addendum, like we work in a context that's constantly evolving. There emergencies pop up all the time and we need to be able to kind of act quickly on our feet. And luckily we work with a lot of donors who are really understanding of that and are flexible with us. But I think as we scale up and try to work more formally with government partners and other like development banks and that sort of thing, kind of navigating those bureaucracies will be an interesting challenge for us to work through.
And how do you stay motivated when you say this is super dynamic? Um, quick, you have to react quickly, but then you also have sometimes rather slower progress. How do you stay motivated?
As cheesy as it sounds, I genuinely do. Like, we have a photos folder, in our organization, and I go through like old photos of like customers with their toilets and our staff who just like look really happy to be in the field. And also, we have some like customer testimonials and stuff that are just really fun to read. And I think it's important for me. I work remotely most of the year. And so it's really important for me to kind of remember the ground level aspect of what I'm doing and what we're doing as an organization. And we're always talking about individuals. And even just installing one more toilet can make a huge difference when you're thinking
Mhm.
about it from the human side. And a lot of my work is, number crunching and data and big picture
Mhm.
thinking.
Mhm.
So it's really important for me to kind of remember that ground level human side of all of this.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I can definitely relate to that, especially if you're not working in the field and, as you said, remotely, because so am I.
Yeah.
Um, and remembering and seeing those photos, remembering those voices is, I think, beautiful to see. And it really makes you feel like you're doing something good, which you are. And maybe adding on to this, how would you say your perspective of like humanity shifted through your work?
I think this kind of gets back to what I was saying earlier about thinking about sanitation from a health perspective and then realizing it's about a lot more than that. It's about human dignity. And kind of going back to the aspirational toilet conversation where CBS isn't always thought of as the dream toilet, but for many people it's exactly what they need at that time, both, from a technological perspective, but also from if a household can't afford to install like a whole new pit latrine, they can afford our monthly service fee. Um, and so whether people view CBS as a permanent solution or just a stepping stone, um, I think everything like it's okay. We don't really care why you're choosing to join our service. We're just happy that you're joining our service. And our role isn't to convince anyone to, settle for something less than what they want.
Mhm.
I think our job is to create toilets that people actually enjoy using and that help to restore their dignity every day.
How do people react when they start using your services, your toilets?
I don't have a ton of personal stories off the top of my head. We did a like customer satisfaction survey a while ago, and that was
Mhm.
actually one of my biggest questions when I first started working with soil is I was like, do we have to work hard to convince people to use our toilets?
Mhm.
Like, what does the demand side look like in the areas we work in? And the answers from different people throughout the organization across the board were like, no, we haven't really reached that point where demand is the issue. We're just working really hard to supply as much as we can while ensuring that the service we're providing is going to be reliable and effective for everyone. So we've had to kind of hold ourselves back from expanding at times,
Mhm.
even when people are
Mhm.
coming to us asking for a toilet. Yeah, so demand side isn't a huge issue yet. I think later down the line, dreamland when we've achieved coverage of everyone who wants a toilet and then trying to tackle people who have a toilet but maybe it's not actually safe sanitation, maybe it actually isn't properly treated or taken care of, and so
Mhm.
then marketing for those types of people. We have a lot of those people in our service now, but once that becomes the only type of person we're marketing to, I think we might have to make some adjustments in terms of how we sell what we do.
Mm. Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think once people understand how life-changing it can be, I think there's not much of convincing to be
Exactly.
done, really. And you
Exactly.
have that trust because you're there for people's well-being at the end of the day, and you want to make sure that for taken care of, the environment is taken care of. Do you have somebody who has inspired you most in your journey so far?
Yes, again, this is probably a predictable answer, but it's definitely Sasha Kramer, who's the CEO of Soil, and she's a co-founder. But she is someone who just she came to Haiti first. I think it was as like a human rights observer, but she observed where she noticed the sanitation crisis and just kind of set her mind to like, I want to do something about this. And she never stopped adapting and evolving the service model. It started off as public toilets and then they kind of moved to a household sanitation model. And so she's just continued led this organization to evolve both our organization, but I also think a lot of her work and Soil's work has contributed to the sector evolving in terms of perspectives on what's possible in sanitation in one of the more challenging operational contexts in the world. Like Haiti
Mhm.
is a complicated place to work, and she has shown that it's not only possible, but people want it, and it's exciting.
Is there something specifically that stuck with you in her story? Like,
What has always really impressed me is kind of going the extra mile to build relationships with partners in the government. It's not necessarily like you could come in as, an NGO, do your thing, and not really
mhm,
interface with the government much at all.
mhm,
We've always, and Sasha has always kind of gone the extra mile to ensure, and it shouldn't, this is the thing, is it shouldn't be considered going the extra mile. It should be the standard.
mhm,
Unfortunately, it's not,
mhm,
in a lot of cases. And so, I would say throughout the organization, we always ensure that we're doing things right and in a way that we feel good about. And that often involves kind of partnering with governments, partnering with different authorities to make sure that they're on board with what we're doing, that we can align with their priorities as much as possible.
And what advice would you give to someone who just started in this sector?
It's very small, but I think it's funny. It took me a little while to learn the different terminology of like when should you say human waste and when can you
Mm.
just go ahead and say we're talking about shit. Like what I think
Yeah.
different terms are appropriate in different contexts and
Mhm.
can pack a punch in a different way. And so I think yeah, learning kind of the terminology of people don't want to talk about it outright sometimes. So you have to be creative about how, like, what words do we
Mhm.
use? And other people like it when you're just upfront and blunt about what we're talking about.
It's funny that you brought that up because I'm still learning myself
hmm
because it's probably like the one of the most natural things out there, and I think a lot of people also find it funny when you make jokes about it, but it's like, when's the right moment
Exactly.
to do that?
It's really funny when I'm like meeting new people, say I'm at a dinner party or something, sitting
Mhm.
around the table, and people always ask, "Oh, what do you do?" And I start off with very vague language saying like, "Oh, I work for a sanitation provider." And then you
Mhm.
can kind of immediately pick up when people are interested and want to know more and when people do not want to know any more than that. And it's really fun to kind of navigate those conversations, especially if you're again sitting around a dinner table trying to have a nice meal with people. When do you talk about poop?
Yeah. I have a few final questions for you to wrap this up. First one is, how do you imagine the toilet of the future? Like, let's say in 50 years, where do you think we'll be at?
Honestly, I hope or think toilets will be mostly the same. I think, um, generally speaking, we already have the technology that we need. I think toilets have been innovated to the point where we have what we need, and it's more about like financing scale up and continued operations and maintenance. So
Mhm.
I hope it's what we have now, maybe with some slight tweaks, but just everyone has them and everyone can reliably count on them working and they're clean. Kind of back to one of your initial questions of would you rather wait in line or have a clean toilet? I would hope all of the toilets of the future are clean.
I love that because you're right. We have the technical knowledge of it, right? The solutions of it. And now it's about really spreading those,
Exactly.
making sure they're available. Now, if you could share one message for World Toilet Day with the world, what would it be?
I think kind of along the lines of what I just said, smart sanitation doesn't have to be high tech and super complicated. I think if you have a simple, thoughtfully designed system that can be suitable across a variety of contexts. And that's really what we need.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for everybody who listened as well. We're going to roll out more episodes in this series, so make sure you tune in for the other ones as well. Thank you again, Maya. It was lovely meeting you and having this nice chat with you today.
Thank you for having me.